The purpose of the United States Armed Forces should be self-evident. It is to have a strong military, strong national defense that is well-funded, well-trained, and well-equipped, so that no power on earth, large or small, would dare to attack us, because they know that the response would be overwhelming, whether that's in the nuclear realm or the conventional realm, air, land, sea, or space. That we have a strong military that can defend our interest and prevent anyone from launching any kind of a preemptive or a surprise strike, because they know that the response would be devastating. That is the very heart and the nature of deterrence. We have a strong military so that no one dares test it. And we have a strong Army, Navy, Air Force, Marines, and Space Force towards that end. That's the reason we have our armed forces. What the armed forces are not supposed to be, however, is just a policy tool to get what we want. Now, you would think that that's supposed to be self-evident. It's always been like one of the things that is a hallmark of the United States is that we don't just use power to get our way and to expose the weak and to compel others to do what we want, because we're supposed to be a more enlightened country that looks out for the interest of the small guys. We've often used our power to help the less fortunate and those who don't have power of their own. That's the one of the things that has been good in our favor. But there are now, and it's beginning to get worse, too many politicians in America, too many so-called experts who want to use our military not as a source of last resort, the last thing we have to do in order to keep our people safe. That's the way it used to be. Now then, it's devolved into a policy option of first choice for many people. You think I'm making that up? Let's take a look at a couple of clips here. This is one of these is from yesterday on Fox News, to where Representative Dan Crenshaw was being asked about the current situation in Israel and the war with Hamas and the potential for Hezbollah to come into the war on the side of Hamas and against Israel to open up a northern front. That's a very serious potential here. So Shannon Bream asked Representative Crenshaw what he thought about this.
In the meantime, this is all against the backdrop of some very serious domestic and foreign policy issues. I want to read something from Tom Cotton, like you, a veteran who has served us and our country in uniform. He says this: there have been multiple attacks against Americans by Iran's proxies in the last few days alone. Biden must immediately warn Iran that any attack by its proxies against Americans will be treated as a direct attack by Iran against the U.S. and will be met with massive retaliation. Where are you on exactly what this administration needs to be signaling to Iran at this moment?
You could have read my tweet. I think I tweeted something very similar. So I completely agree with Senator Cotton on this. There needs to be very clear consequences laid out for Iran and Hezbollah. People don't understand this because they're very uncomfortable with this concept, that if you want to prevent war, you have to be able to threaten it and threaten it credibly. And that takes statements that make people uncomfortable. If you want to prevent war, you have to make it very clear that you're willing to beat the crap out of your enemies if they try something.
Okay, let's take a look at what he said there. Now, on the surface, and a lot of people today think, yeah, man, that sounds tough. Yeah, that's right. Those Iranians, they need to understand that we mean business here. And if the best way to avoid having to use war is to make sure they know we'll kick the crap out of them. Very American these days. Problem is, that is not good policy. That actually can set us up for big time trouble. That's not only not going to keep us safe, that kind of mentality is going to put us at greater risk, potentially get Americans killed, and could set the stage for some serious long-term damage to our country. Okay, now again, I know it sounds great. Yeah, that's what we want to do to prevent war. Okay, going back to our original premise, what is the use of the American armed forces? Is it to defend America and to prevent us from being attacked so that we have the capacity to win any war that anyone launches against us? Or is it a policy tool to use for things that we want to happen, things that we don't like? This situation with Israel and potentially Hezbollah and possibly even Iran, those things are not don't threaten America. We have a definite preference for how that works out. And Israel is a staunch ally and friend in the area, but they are not a military. We don't have a Article 5 type NATO in a relationship so that an attack on one is an attack on the other, and that we have an obligation to go and defend them. That's not the nature of our alliance. We have a situation to where we provide all kinds of weapons and assistance, as we have for decades, so that Israel can defend itself. Now, they have already fought a war in 1967. They fought a large two-front war in 1973, and they have prevailed. Since that time, they have become even more capable and better and stronger. They have already fought, I think it's 5 wars with Hamas in the Gaza Strip. They know what they're doing here. They fought many conflicts in Lebanon. They know what they're doing. They can handle their national security. They don't need America. We didn't fight in any of those previous wars. They don't need us to fight now. We've given them a security and assistance, and we'll continue to do that. But you see that there's this underlying almost lust, almost desire among many in Washington. And it's not just, I'm not just trying to pick on Representative Crenshaw here. There's a bunch that are like him. And they mentioned some even in that clip. And here in the next piece, you're going to see there's others that have an even stronger view. But Shannon Bream recognized the significance of what he was asking, and she said, okay, let's clarify something.
So to clarify, I mean, you've had Senator Graham out there, who has also a veteran himself, saying, listen, we will tell Iran we're going to actually physically strike at your oil manufacturing, those kinds of things. I mean, are you talking about physical strikes within the borders of Iran?
If they invade Israel, if they do direct attacks on it, because if they do that, now you have an existential threat against Israel. So absolutely, yes, President Biden needs to put it on the table that there could be physical strikes in Iran if they do physical strikes inside Israel.
Okay, again, a couple of things here. First of all, you heard him say, if Iran invades Israel, or if they engage in them, then we need to make clear that we're going after them. So first point, we have no mutual defense treaty with Israel. They don't need it. They can handle what they can't, what they're facing in their region. They're already the strongest military in the region. They have proven it overwhelmingly. They have proven it through many conflicts that nobody is stronger militarily in the region than they are. They don't need external direct support from the United States. The reason we give them all this aid is so that they can handle it on their own, and they can. But now the second point is even more fundamental than that, because there's this view that Iran is going to suddenly move on Israel and destroy them and wipe them off the face of the earth, because they have claimed that rhetorically many times. Can they do it, though? Let's say that for the moment we actually would consider going in and helping Israel militarily, either on the ground or in the air, to defend themselves, so that we might consider actually getting sucked into a war or choosing to get into a war that doesn't affect our direct national security interest. Let's take a little look at the map here, because I'm an Army guy. I've used to live to look at the maps, and we trained and studied off them. Let's pull up a map here and let's look at the graphic representation of what he's talking about. So here's a map of Israel, the Middle East. There you see, and here's Jerusalem, and there's Tel Aviv up there. And if you look a little bit further down to the south, you can see the Gaza Strip, where a lot of the chaos is going on right now. That's mainly centered on. And now then, let's back out, and here's Iraq, and down here in this lower corner, this is the Maysan province area of Iraq, which is where I served. Actually, I trained in an Iraqi border battalion in Iran. So let's see if Iran wanted to invade Israel, they wanted to go to Jerusalem. You'd see they'd have to cross this area here. They'd have to go across Iraq, cross Jordan, then cross the river, and then get into Jerusalem. How far is that? It's like 1,100 kilometers. Okay, that's across open desert that is just, I mean, it's just uninviting, and it's hard to navigate, as you can imagine. I've driven across this area a number of times, and I can tell you how hard that actually is. There is no way. I mean, what is he suggesting? That Iranian tanks are going to start rolling across the desert, that they're going to, cross all through Iraq, cross through Jordan, both of whom are friends of the United States and allies, actually, for many years, that they're going to allow that to happen. And then all of a sudden they're going to invade Israel, or that they're going to send jet aircraft fighters across 2 countries. Israel can't even get across that area to attack Iran unless they have refuel help from the United States. Does anybody think that Iran can actually invade Israel like that? Now, the one thing they can do, and here's where we start to get into the real heart of this issue. Now, Iran does have some cards to play. They're not powerless here. If we attack them, if Israel attacks Iran, then there is some problem. There is some risk here, because they do have a significant missile force. Iran can start launching very powerful ballistic missiles. highly precise missiles in some cases. They can shut down the Strait of Hormuz. They can send the price of oil up the roof, because if they shut that thing down, it affects half the globe's economy. And because global oil is a global commodity, don't get the thought that, hey, we're oil independent. We're insulated from that because we can do our own. Yeah, we do have our own, but oil is a global commodity, and the price of oil is a global issue. You can't keep it down here at, $75 a barrel for us while it's up to 150 or greater for the rest of the world, which is almost certainly what would happen if the Strait of Hormuz was shut down. They have speedboats. They can actually mine the strait. They can keep commerce out for a long time. They actually have anti-ship missiles. They could actually put our ships at risk if they overwhelm our systems. I mean, there's all kinds of things they can do. They're not going to do them unless we attack them openly. So any of this talk about one thing happens here in Israel, man, we're going to go in and we're going to launch and start a war here, whether that's Senator Cotton, whether it's Senator Graham, whether it's Representative Crenshaw. Look, I know we love to sound tough, but folks, we have to act smart too. We cannot make policy on emotions. Yes, most in America love Israel. As a Christian, I love Israel. I support Israel too. But we're American citizens here, and we have to do things that make sense. We have to do things that are wise. What America cannot do, let me point blank tell you, what we cannot do is get sucked into a Middle East war at the same time we're trying to support Ukraine. With now President Biden wants another $60 billion and all kinds of ammunition and weapons that come along with that, and another $14 billion he's already saying he wants to give to Israel. At the same time, we're trying to actually increase our defense capacity in the Indo-Pacific. Folks, we can't do all that stuff, and especially in an environment to where almost certainly, if Iran was attacked, they would use the result of the capabilities that they do have, and they want to hurt us as much as possible. So they would shut down the Strait of Hormuz, almost the first thing they would do, because they're very limited in power. They can't project power, but in their front yard, in the Strait of Hormuz, they can jam up the economy of the world, which would have direct impact on us. It would have impact on our allies. Do you think Europe would be fine with this? Do you think the global South would be fine with this? If all of a sudden the cost of all fuel and petroleum products went through the roof and would stay that way for a long time, it would have significant negative ramifications on everybody's economy. And of course, the global economy, it affects us all. And what hits one eventually hits everybody. We cannot afford this. America's vital national interests lie in preventing war, not seeking it. Let me reiterate that. Our national interests should not be formed on emotion to where let's go attack Iran because people have been biting at the chomp for this for decades. And to say we're going to do that if this thing happens here, because it may. It is possible that Hezbollah could open a northern front against Israel. That's a very real possibility. We better not take the advice of these folks and a bunch more like them and get involved in a war here, because we can't afford it. Our interests are in helping Israel defend themselves, and they can. This is not about abandoning Israel, which is what Biden claimed the other day, that we can't abandon Israel. No one's talking about abandoning Israel. I'm definitely not talking about abandoning Israel. I'm saying help them defend themselves, and they can. So let's don't exacerbate that situation by getting into a war that we can't survive, not because they can destroy us, but because of the global responsibilities we have. It could sink us from within. So let's make clear we understand what's at stake and what's realistic here and what our obligations are to the American people. Our obligations are first to the American people to keep us safe and economically prosperous, and then we can help others. Because folks, let me tell you this as we end here, if we can't handle our own economy, if we don't have the ability to keep our own national security at safe, we can't help anybody else. Israel, Ukraine, NATO, we're going to be suffering everywhere if we don't keep ourselves strong economically and safe national security wise. That's your deep dive today. We make sure we're clear on it. Thanks. We'll see you next time.